So that's what that was all about. I think it was that freedom to explore and to invent and, try different things.
Hello, print friends, and welcome. I'm your host, Miranda Metcalf. Each week, I chat with artists who use print-based media to do something beyond the expected. This is a bilingual podcast, so if you subscribe to us, you'll be getting episodes in English with me, as well as in Spanish with Ronaldo Gil Zambrano. Together, we speak to printmakers around the globe about their practice and passions in the world of printmaking. Hello Print Friend is brought to you by Speedball Art Products, who've been offering a diverse range of high-quality products to your practice since 1997. If you're looking to add some pizzazz to that practice, check out their new line of additive glitter. Add a sprinkle of their additive glitter to any Speedball fabric, screen printing ink, and bring a touch of shimmer to your next design. This glitter additive can be used in nearly any ratio, so whether your sparkling vision is more subtle or dripping with scintillating shine, check out the link in the show notes. My guest this week is Katherine Brimberry, the founder of the iconic Flatbed Press of Austin. We talk about how a controversial mural in her hometown post office lit the spark of interest for art in her as a young girl, her road to starting Flatbed and how she's kept the institution going for over 30 years, and the joys of collaborative printmaking. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and prepare to wrestle up some additions with Katherine Brimberry. Hi, Katherine. How's it going?
It's going well. Thanks, Miranda.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our talk. I feel like Flatbed and you and its story has been a highly requested interview and has also been on my list for quite some time. And we got to be a bit of ships passing in the night at Austin this last weekend, but I knew that we had this conversation coming up. And so that was really great. And I'm looking forward to finally getting a chance to hear your story.
Well, thank you, Miranda. I mean, that was fun at the Print Expo, and I felt the same way. I thought, well, we're going to be talking. We better not talk too much.
Yeah, keep it fresh. Yeah, keep it fresh. Totally. Well, before we dive in, could you please let people listening know, by way of introduction, just who you are and where you are and what you do?
Well, I'm Katherine Brimberry. I'm right now sitting at Flatbed in my office. Flatbed Press was founded back in 1989 by myself, and I had a business partner, and I kind of dove in as master printer. And that's what I love to do. I found out through trial by fire that I absolutely love collaborating with artists. And the rest, with good fortune and wonderful people supporting me in all kinds of ways and great artists coming my way to Austin, I've been able to kind of maintain this ship afloat for the last 32 years. So, and it's been a great ride. I've loved it. It's been good. And that doesn't mean it's over. It just means I'm enjoying it and still am.
Wonderful. Yeah. So where did you grow up and what role did art play in that part of your life?
Well, I grew up on the high plains of Texas, which is the panhandle around Lubbock. My father was a farmer in a small town south of Lubbock. Very little art in that town except for an amazing mural at the post office, which I always had an excuse to go into the post office and look at it. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to remember the artist. He's not someone that people would know very well, but his painting made a huge impression on me. And I don't ever remember not wanting to make images, not wanting to draw, and always being impressed with art.
What was the subject of the mural that captured you so?
It was a huge landscape of cattle, people herding cattle, but there was a prairie fire. All in the background. There was smoke swirling all throughout the landscape. And there were two vaqueros. They looked like vaqueros. They looked like they might be from Mexico, and they had beards, and they had roped and slaughtered a calf, and they had opened its body to drag along the fire. And so it was horrific and dramatic and
this
powerful.
Is like such an intense subject for a public post office. I love it. I feel like you wouldn't see that these days.
You probably wouldn't. And I know that there was a big controversy in this little tiny 8,000 people town about that mural. But the mayor took it on himself to grow a beard just like the vaqueros and championed it and got it put on the post office wall. It was an amazing piece, and it made a huge impression on me.
Yeah.
I also happened to have a grandmother who, after being widowed in her 50s, went back and to college and started taking art classes.
Mm-hmm.
And she taught me to paint with oils the way that she was being taught with oils when I was probably 11. And, and probably the first print I ever made was from my mother's little gel pad that she made handouts for Sunday school. She would make little handouts with this gel pad, and I figured I could probably make pictures too. So I started making pictures off the gel pad. But so I don't remember not ever wanting to be creative in, either making images, or I did all kinds of things, building things, imagining things, creating plays. I was that kind of kid. So I loved it. And when it came time to go to high school, I was able to even do some lithographs, kind of from a risograph class. And I got an art scholarship, very little one, but it was to a small Christian school in Lubbock, and went there and had a fantastic instructor there, professor, who went on to become a sculpture professor in California. But he was amazing. And, I knew my path pretty early. I just didn't know how to get on it very well for a while. Went on to school, married very early, and my husband and I went to New Mexico, and I studied with, since you're living in Santa Fe, you may have heard of Elmer Schooley, who was a printmaker as well as a painter. Studied with him at New Mexico Highlands in Las Vegas. Really fell in love with printmaking there. And that's where I knew that's what that was the medium for me, the processes, the way that I could take something and manipulate it. And it wasn't like drawing on paper. I had a surface to draw, whether it's a copper or stone. I probably did more stone litho there than I did copper, because we didn't have copper. We had zinc. And after, starting a family on the Navajo reservation where I taught art and also taught printmaking to high school students, ended up in Alamogordo, my family and I went to graduate school in Las Cruces and studied with Spencer Fiddler, who happened to have his professor was Mauricio Lazansky. And so I was able to meet him, and it was a very forward art community in Las Cruces in the late 70s, early 80s, was just when I was there.
Yeah.
And I found a lot of freedom under Spencer to just kind of explode intaglio and not let it be a process-oriented, technically oriented medium, have it be an more expressive medium. And so it was a very rewarding and exciting time for me.
Yeah. It seems like, your story has in it this seed of the power of good public art, which I just love, because and how good art can be challenging and often is. And I've worked a bit on civic grants councils and that kind of thing in my days in the arts, and you so often, now those conversations are just like, oh, like this little kid flying a kite is left-handed, and we don't want people to think that will make right-handed kids feel bad, like these like insane conversations. And I just love this idea of like this like slaughtered calf, just inspiring the young Katherine and just being like, I'm going to make art, because it does. And it's just so important. And then it set you on this journey and that, brought you to my part of the world. And then of course, the power of good instructors as well. And people who, can inspire you. Yeah. Yeah. So,
yeah, my work has never been about beauty, that it has to be beauty. I think it was those early experiences of, good art has to be powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned a bit, this idea of kind of you had your experience with stone lithography, and then going to Las Cruces, you kind of got the experience with intaglio. And you mentioned sort of in passing this idea of sort of, blowing off the doors of the construction of what intaglio could be during that time. Can you speak to that a little bit more? What did that kind of look like for you, that freedom of exploration within what is often, such a medium that's about the precision and the detail and the exacting nature of it? It doesn't sound like that was what you were doing with it.
No. My professor, Spencer Fiddler, and the other professors that were there that I was working closely with, when we would have a critique, it was not about the niceties of a print. It was about you're making art. And I did a lot of drawing and collage, and I even did some sculpture all at the same time. And I found that, when I made a sculpture, I found how can I get this experience of this sculpture into a print? I wanted to kind of break down the barriers, not that a print needed to become a sculpture, but that I could create an experience with a print that was beyond, what a typical print would look like. And I would get ideas from the sculpture, and that would push me to experiment, maybe even invent what I thought was inventing. I'm sure other people have tried things, but I was always wanting to invent ways to make marks or print it so that it had someone would experience something that I was experiencing. And so that's what that was all about. I think it was that freedom to explore and to invent and, try different things by using other medias, to kind of bounce ideas around from and to. So even when I made sculpture, I was making sculpture that would kind of invent something that I was thinking to print. It was a really rich experience. I think it has a lot to do with how I became a collaborating printer.
Yeah. Yeah, that was going to be my next question, is sort of in this arc of from the post office to Flatbed Press. When did collaborative printmaking as even an option or as, a whole different branch of the printmaking world come into your life?
When Flatbed started, although when it did, and I did my first collaboration with Jack Hanley, who was a painter teaching painting at University of Texas. He was really my true first collaboration. I realized this was a lot like how I taught, only I was taking responsibility for the technical creation of the work. But when I taught, I was teaching in a way that I was taught from Spencer Fiddler and Elmer Schooley and Bob Privet. These are all my professors who really didn't put their hand into what I was doing. They challenged me to look at how I draw, look at this, or think about what can you invent, where can you take it, instead of how can you nail it down. There's a difference. And so that's how I was teaching. And so when I started collaborating, of course, I became responsible for the success of the work, the technical success of the work. And I had to use my teaching skills to kind of inform the artists I was working with and get them comfortable with working with the techniques that I set out. But their choices and their marks had to be theirs. So let me tell you about the first collaboration.
Yeah.
sort of blew my mind with Jack Hanley. Jack was making these wonderful paintings that had really tight little drawings in the center of them, kind of stylistic, almost pictographic, but they were these drawings and just simple contour, but drawings of like a plague doctor, a prince, a shaman, other things he was doing in his paintings. But he wanted, and he explained this to me, he wanted to contrast the control of those with a chaotic background or chaotic field that he could put them in. And he wanted to completely lose control of that field. So, wow, that's like a candy store to me. And what can we do to lose control and to still have it, create this wonderful chaos that a wonderful controlled drawing could work on top of? So that was so much fun. Mm-hmm. We were pouring acid. We were doing things you probably shouldn't do, but we were, we were spraying off ground in the water and putting, anything you could think of. I brought white ground to the table. We were trying our best to not control it, apply it to the plate, not control it, and then get it etched into the plate. And we ended up with 3 separate prints that are called the Ideology Suite, one has a plague doctor printed in the center, one has a prince in the center, one of them has a shaman, and the backgrounds are all created in this way that is really very pleasing, yet he created it without knowing what it was going to do, and, hopefully without control. And anyway, I love those. I love that whole process of being able to let go in that suite and work with an artist. More than that, work with this artist's ideas. If an artist can come with a concept like that, I can meet them and to, help fulfill their concept in a printmakerly way.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you about, the way you engage with the actual collaborative process and why it kind of lights you up, and you can tell that just from the way you talk about it, even, your first project, from, I'm guessing, 1989, you still hear the joy in your voice. And is it the kind of like the problem solving? Is it the fact that artists bring things to the table that you wouldn't have come up with on your own, but then you get to engage with it? What is it that keeps you, coming back all this time?
Well, part of it's problem solving, but more often, it's the actual doing it. It's working with them. It's finally seeing this, like, oh, what? It's like an aha moment, when it's both the process and the problem solving, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's, that's just one collaboration. They're all different. But I think I have to always come with a very open mind about it, to hear and see how the artist wants to go about making something or what their concept is. As soon as I try to solve a problem the same way the second time, I know it's not going to work very well.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But in the process of the last 32 years of doing these collaborations, I have built up a bigger vocabulary of ways we can work together that I can propose to an artist. These are just techniques, really, but it's got to be something that really fits that artist's concept and their way of working. If it doesn't, it's going to be pretty awkward and not successful.
Mm-hmm. And when you say it has to match the way of working, is that often aesthetic choices? So if they're very painterly, you might want to use spit bite, or if they're very precise, is it the aesthetic, or is it also kind of maybe more philosophical as well? If there's someone who you can tell from talking, wants to be able to make a lot of quick decisions. Yeah.
The aesthetic has a lot to do with it, but also how does that artist work? Do they work very slow? Do they have trouble making decisions? Some very good artists takes them a long time, or takes longer than others. Let's just say it that way, to really settle on, whether this is working for them or not. I like to tell people when I talk about collaboration that I don't bat 1,000, which means not everything we do works. And but it works best when the artist is open to the process, and when the artist that the artist and myself, we can kind of go forward deciding. It's in that indecisive time. That's the hard thing.
Yeah.
The hardest thing, because I don't want to take control of the art making. I do want to guide them in a way that they, like, you can do this or you can do that. If you do this, most likely, we don't know all of that time with an intaglio what exactly is going to happen, but there's a chance this will be where you're going. If you do that, there's a chance you'll go there. Then they've got to make that kind of decision of where they want to go.
Have you found that, over the last 32 years that you've gotten really good at reading artists quickly? Like, I'm kind of imagining, just kind of reflecting it to my own experience, just for a couple of years doing interviews and people coming on and I can, just from the chat that we have beforehand, my mind starts doing these calculations about, okay, like, they need a little bit more time to make sure I know that they're finished. And if I jump on too quickly, I'll cut them off. I start kind of, almost if it had a noise, it would be like beep, 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 like scanning the person. Do you do that kind of consciously when you start to collaborate with someone?
I think it's subconscious, but yeah, I think that happens a lot. I can tell. And into the collaboration, I really, I get the rhythm of how they like to work. And so I just sort of start to marry that rhythm or try to, get into their rhythm. Somebody told me once that collaboration was like dancing. And I do think that's very true. And you have to match your steps with theirs. And sometimes you lead and sometimes you follow. But you always try to, you're trying to get somewhere. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. And the metaphor could extend even further to the ability to react, to changes in your partner, in the music, in the outcome that you're going for, all of it for sure. I'd like to back up just a touch and maybe hear the story of how Flatbed came to be, So you were, because, we kind of last left off, you were in New Mexico. And at what point did starting your own collaborative shop sort of come into your mind, and what was the process of manifesting that?
Well, that was interesting. When I never heard of a collaborative shop really when I was in New Mexico, and moved to Austin, started teaching printmaking at Austin Community College in St. Edwards. And I met a man that my husband had known years and years ago, when they were teenagers, and Mark L. Smith. And he was a professor teaching printmaking at St. Edwards before I did. And I told him about that someday, this is what my dream was I wanted to create a community shop or a open studio where I could buy a press, move it in, and I get a free studio because I rent out. People could come and I could keep on, using the press, and I could share it with people. That was what I really wanted to do. And I told him about that. And he had seen my work. He liked my work a lot. He had also been writing for the newspaper. So we stayed in touch. He actually did some art consulting and bought some of my work. So through the years, when I found a wonderful French tool for sale here in Austin from someone that was moving away, I just went down and I bought it with a personal loan. I moved it to St. Edwards because they told me I could keep it there before I found a place for it. And so I told Mark that I wanted to start this community press, or this open studio. And he said, before you do that, will you come talk to me and let's have coffee? I've got an idea. So I did. And he said, how about we start what you want, but also start a collaborative publishing press? And I want to name it Flatbed, he said. And he wrote it out on a piece of paper. I remember this, put a line under it. He said he was he was a designer. He's a very good designer. And he had this design in mind about how the word should look. And I said, well, okay, let's do it. And I got a $5,000 personal loan that from my little credit union. And I think he sold a pickup truck for $5,000. And we found a space. I moved my press in there. We started fixing the space up. This was in November of 89, and we incorporated in November of 89 as an S corporation. And then we got it ready to open in February of 2000. I started that collaboration I told you about in January of 2000.
Okay.
And our symbol, the chop that we use, I cut that on a lino cut after doing a brush drawing on a lino cut of what I thought flatbed should look like. You know, the flat of the bed and the circle of the French tool and the rotation, and cut it, and that became our chop.
Yeah.
So it was kind of this marriage between his idea and my idea. And we, being a daughter of a farmer, I mean, that's a small business in a way.
Totally.
I knew for us to make the rent every month, we were going to have to really, we had to have a broad spectrum of income. We weren't going to be able to make money from publications right away. We weren't going to be able to pay ourselves right away. So we had to keep other jobs. And so we offered memberships where people could come in at $100 a month, and they could use our facilities Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we would do our collaborations and our editioning. And then we would work, and then I did workshops on the weekends usually. And between all those incomes, we had enough to pay the rent and the utilities and buy supplies. And that's where it started from. I was really happy with that too. I mean, just to, have it pay for itself and not having to go into debt any more than I did felt like a success to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm loving everything you're saying about this, like the nuts and bolts of making the money work, because it is something that, of course, is really important in the arts, and it's something that we maybe can always stand to talk about a bit more, honestly. And that so many people in the arts are in small businesses, whether that's community print shops or art galleries or running their own sort of teaching gig. All of it does fall into that umbrella. And so we have to be creatives, but we also have to be business people if we're going to continue to have something that has a longevity like what you've created, to really think, okay, like, how am I going to pay the rent? How am I going to buy my paper? It's it's a serious consideration. So I'm just saying, like, I really appreciate you diving into it a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to talk to, if our interns are ever interested, or, my staff, I like to talk to them about it, because if you want longevity and in any kind of practice, you've got to figure out the money end of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And from what I've heard from a lot of people, I've been a lot of places, talked to a lot of people who are running shops, the publishing can be the part that really lights them up, but then it's often community studio access and classes that keep the lights on in the long term. So it's that balance, where that printmaking collaboration is just an incredibly rewarding experience. And then, but, classes, people come in and you are putting in relatively little financial overhead for that, because you can build that into the cost of the class in a way that, like, with publishing, especially if you're your own dealer, you have to put everything up front and then wait for that financial balance to come maybe over decades, as the edition sells.
It's true. It's so true. And I remember figuring this out at the beginning, when I was doing the Handley collaborations. I remember putting my pencil to the paper and thinking, okay, if we sell these prints $600 each and we have editions of 20 of each, how much money would that?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's a lot of money. But then the reality is that, yes, that's going to be spread over 30 years. And so, the publishing eventually, after if you do enough really good prints and you do them over a long period of time, the sales of what you published will start to become significant, but certainly not at the beginning. And I've even had prints that started out selling at $500. And then the artist has become extremely, extremely popular or well-known over the years and had gone, international with their work. And suddenly their prints are not worth $500, but the supply and demand makes them worth $5,000. And that just sort of blows my mind. But that's happened. And I, but who can predict,
Yeah, absolutely. I was just chatting with Jack Lemmon from Landfall about the prints that he did with Kara Walker when she was 20, she was doing just mind-bogglingly advanced, conceptual, challenging prints at 20 years old. But that was the first time she came to Landfall. And, now those monumental prints that she made there, they're probably $70,000 or something. I don't even know how much they are, but it's so interesting how printmakers and collaborative printmakers, they do have that, that relationship to like the art market, like the grand, like international art market, because you interact with so many different artists and often, maybe kind of early on in their career because they are still open to taking on something maybe slightly unusual like collaborative making. Yeah.
But I worked with Trenton Doyle Hancock when he was 21. And he hadn't even gone to graduate school yet. And we did 6 editions with him. I happened to see his drawings on the floor of a gallery. And I thought, oh, my gosh, I really want to work with this person because they're going to make prints that are different from anything else I've ever seen. I know they're going to. And so I invited him and, put him up. I just thought, he's a young kid. He can't afford to do this. I can barely afford it, but we're going to do it. And so he came for a week and we made these wonderful editions and they ended up being in the Whitney and, they've just got on everywhere now. And we couldn't even afford to really print any, and I'm not ever very interested in doing large editions, but I decided to do the OULA thing and print as many prints as we could print in one day for the edition. And because that's really about all we could do.
Yeah.
And so, Trenton's prints that he did from 1998 are now in editions of 14, 16, these editions, and they're pretty much sold out. But I would have not known. I just wanted to work with somebody like Trenton that would kind of set my ear on edge. I would do something different.
Which, I think, brings up the question for me, how did you and how do you find artists that you want to work with? And obviously, you get exposure to a lot of artists sort of just through being in the arts, but what is it about seeing an artist practice that lights you up and makes you say, I want this person in my studio?
Oh, boy, that's a great question. Well, sometimes artists come to us and I don't know them and I will work with them on a contract basis, and I'll just fall in love with what they're doing. And the ideas will just start flowing and I'll ask them back and we'll publish them. Sometimes like Trenton, I'll see his work and I'll think, and the work is just unusual and I can tell that I can tell, you get jaded in the print world, but I can see what they're doing. And I'm thinking, they will do something, they will make prints like I haven't ever made before. And I want this person to know about, I want them to translate themselves into printmaking, not to translate their work like it is, but to do something with those ideas in printmaking. And so, and sometimes, I'll find an artist like that and invite them. And I found out that it doesn't hurt to invite,
Right. Yeah.
No.
Doesn't hurt. Yeah. The worst case scenario, they say no, and they're just as not in your studio as they were to begin with. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Well, early on in Flatbed, my business partner had to leave at one point, and I was running the shop on my own. And so I decided to do, I was thinking about the publishing and how I could afford to publish because I really wanted to. So I created something called a Flatbed Portfolio 1. It's Roman numeral 1. We haven't done a Roman numeral 2, but it was, and I decided just to ask outrageous, people that I never thought I could ever get in the shop. And I pre-sold the portfolios to about 5 people to raise money, and got enough money that I could put them up, if they came to town. So I thought, and buy paper and copper. So I did that, and I asked Luis Jimenez, and he said yes.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
Said, wow, what an experience that was. And I invited Terry Allen, and he said yes. I mean, I was like, oh, these people are saying yes, and they're coming. And then I invited, Dan Rizzi, and he said yes. And so, and some other artists that were less well known who I just wanted to work with, and they became a part of this portfolio. And Michael Ray Charles, he did not Black Cats Go Out, but the white power print for that portfolio. So it was, I can't really tell you how or why artists' work might, I might invite them. I don't have a strategy. I just try to keep my eyes open and that kind of thing.
And it sounds like, too, maybe part of it is a curiosity and an excitement about what their practice would look like translated into print. That real interest of, okay, like they're doing something really wonderful in this way or in this medium, and just wanting to see the outcome of what would happen if we get them in a print shop. I mean, that not knowing and then knowing has got to be a really rewarding part of working at Flatbed.
Oh my gosh, it is. I love that part. I love it when we're working with an artist and they don't know either,
Yeah.
And you can pull that print that just blows everybody's mind, and it's like, wow, this is what printmaking is. This is printmaking. This isn't your little tiny, which are beautiful often, but this is printmaking. This is making art using this machine and ink and a matrix. So,
yeah. And I would reckon, too, that a big part of the practice that you have there, it has to be around building community and building these long-term relationships. And that side of the art world and printmaking in general is always something that's really interesting to me, because I feel like I sometimes feel like I need to compartmentalize like friendship and business and friendship and work. And I say this as someone who ended up marrying a printmaker. So clearly, I'm not, I'm not really good at that, but that's always an interesting side of things, especially, when you've got a community that has this potential to go back decades. Is that community building something kind of consciously that you went into, or does it just really form and you pick up friends who are also colleagues, who are also business partners, who are also might be interested in financially supporting a project like the portfolio, and it all kind of weaves together? Do you find that to be a really organic process?
I think it's more organic, although I am very conscious, or was conscious from the beginning, of wanting to build a community, with people that would come into the shop that I would have a lot of, commonality with. And because I was used to working in a print shop, printmakers work side by side and they bounce ideas off of each other. They learn from each other. And I was, I missed that from my graduate school days. And I was looking forward to that too. But on the organically, weaving into the other community building side, I also realized that collectors and people who want to support or collect work also need to be
Yeah.
educated and brought in. And I mean, I don't find it a task to stay in relationship with people like that, because we love printmaking. It was Jonathan Bober. He's now the printmaking. It's not just, he's a curator at the National Gallery of Art, and his specialty is printmaking. And he was an awesome at the time. And I remember him saying once to me, he said, collectors, once they really know and understand how a print is made, the technical stuff, then that layer they can go deeper into a print than they would have before. And there's this deeper respect and understanding and passion, if you want to say. He didn't say that. I'm saying that. And I know that happens. And so it's really fun to get to know the collectors that we have that help support us here, and to talk to them about the nerdy stuff, or the printmaking techniques or this or that, because it just helps them understand and love the prints more, and it helps build a stronger support system, I think, for Flatbed too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really significant and rings very true to me point about the ways in which education and community building overlap within printmaking, because it's that exchange of knowledge, I think, where people get excited and then they want to share it with someone else, and then they want to share it with someone else. And because there is so much to know, it's such a deep vein to mine once you get the bug. And I think Jonathan is super on the nose when he says that collectors get so much more out of collecting prints if they know about it. And having worked at Davidson for a few years and really been that frontline print collector person, on the sales floor every day, talking to people, I would have people sometimes who were all ready to buy something, and I realized that they actually thought it was basically a printout from a computer. And I was like, you were going to spend $700? I would always be like, what? You didn't even know that this was an etching, or something like that. And then they get really excited, of course, when you can't explain it to them. But yeah, that's a big part of it. And I can only imagine that it has become so important in the last 2 years with the pandemic and all the transitions that people have made, that community must have been quite a bedrock for surviving and pivoting during this time.
It was, but it was hard too, because people were very hesitant to come to the shop. And we recently moved to our third location, which is, and I'm so happy here because we have a special studio for our community printmakers, and another studio for doing collaboration, so we can do that privately and at the same time that people are here. And really, my dream was to have a beehive of people working, a community here, and a beehive of collectors coming by to visit. But COVID put a real bite on that, and I did miss a lot of my community. But it's starting to come back, and so we're hoping that it comes back even better than before. We've had finally people coming by that have found us and that feel strong enough and well enough to kind of keeping on and come by the shop. Yeah. But that we have an advantage also when collectors do come, and now they are starting to come again. I can take them into the studio and show them techniques or show them printing going on in the back, and they can get the feel for what they're buying. They can get the feel for where that print came from, and I think it's helpful for them to know that.
Yeah. I mean, that's always been kind of one of my dreams, if I could have my own print studio or print gallery, is that it would absolutely have to have at least a small press inside of it that people could see and touch and interact with and really understand, because it's abstract when you try to explain it. It's so simple, but for some reason, even after 15 years in this business, my words still fall short sometimes, and I go back to the classic potato print idea, which it's just so undignified to try to reduce like Luis Jimenez lithographs to a potato print. I don't care how I have to do it, but it's it is part of that education and seeing it firsthand. That's got to be really cool to continually get to see that people's eyes lighting up when they make that connection between, wow, like this came from that, because it is remarkable when you're producing prints at the level that you do at Flatbed. It really is. Yeah.
Thank you. Well,
yeah.
I hope you can, come by one of these days too. I'd love to show you the shop.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you do have also a program that's the Friends of Flatbed print as well, which I feel like fits in really nicely to this conversation about education and community. Can you talk about that program?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. When we got to this third location that we're at now, I wanted to find a way to, again, kind of expand our community and reward the community that was supporting us. And so I created a Friends of Flatbed on several different levels. And the level that I really target toward is the Kolowitz Circle. Kolowitz, of course, is one of my heroines. I love her work, and it's a little dark too, but that's all right. And anyway, that's people that support us. It's $1,000 to be a member of that circle. Will get a print that we create, that we select during that we create during that coming year. So the money that I get from the membership goes into a special fund, and I use it to create like a Kolowitz grant, I suppose that's what I'm calling it. And I apply it to the costs of creating a project that is going to be an impression from me. That project will be distributed to these collectors at the end of the year. And I also want to educate these collectors even more about processes, and that's been hard with COVID. I'm not a very good Zoom person with techniques, so that I'm hoping to do more of that. But so I try to, I include them in demos. If I create a demo, or if a special artist collaboration is coming up, I want them to meet the artists. I'll have them come or inform them about it so they can come if they like. And that's been so helpful to us. I understand now, and as printmaker, running this business, I didn't realize there were people that really wanted to support us, but maybe not necessarily to pick out a print to buy, but this is a way that they could support us, and I'm very grateful that they could do that.
Yeah.
Oh, they also get a percentage, like a large discount off of one print that they do choose during the year. So I think that's a good way for small presses to help fund projects. It's sort of like my Flatbed Portfolio 1 back in the 90s is, find a way to gather up some money to do, challenging projects, or projects with people that aren't well known, that wouldn't be able to create a print with, a co-published print, or help with the expenses. And anyway, it's all a win. I'm always looking for the win-win any way I can find it.
Yeah.
So
and I think that the continued innovation that, we hear, like you're moving studios and you're coming up with new ideas, and the Friends of Flatbed program, I know a couple studios in Thailand that run almost exclusively off that kind of direct patronage. And if you can just find a handful of people who are of the mind and of the financial stability, to just be able to be like, no, I want to see this in the world, and I'm going to support it, and then get really excited about the prints they get in return. That's a great way for everyone to win, as you say, the win-win. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So you also do, exhibitions as well. And it just seems like you have so much going on at Flatbed. Because I think about working in a commercial gallery like I do, and how my whole world revolves around just putting on an exhibition, let alone being a collaborative printmaker and running, as you say, something like the Friends of Flatbed and having a community press. And so out of everything that you all do, how does it all work? I mean, how many people are at Flatbed and how do you keep it all going?
Well, it takes a team. I mean, it does. And I'll tell you, my husband retired from being a school counselor about 10, 12 years ago. And I found out that he is the best preparator I've ever met.
Oh, that's convenient.
Yeah. I mean, I still help curate it, but he puts it together. He's also an archivist, and he takes care of keeping all the prints in order and where they are and all of that. He's a huge part of our team. And then I have two printers. I have Alyssa Ebinger, who recently came from being the apprentice at Tamarind, and she's here. And she's taken a lot of my load from, admin load, and also printing litho and doing litho collaborations. And Richie Pena, who started as an intern here, but he has his MFA from the University of Dallas, and he's already an accomplished printer, but he hadn't had a lot of experience with Intelio, and so I'm apprenticing him there. But he's great, and if it wasn't for all of us, we wouldn't do as much as we do.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So it just takes a dedicated team to put it together, get it done. And then I have people that volunteer, to help me with the workshops. Belinda Casey helps me with that. And I can exchange volunteer for memberships here, and, whatever we can do to kind of, again, another win-win thing. I mean, I'm looking for that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, in the meantime, where can people find you and follow you and learn more about the great things happening at Flatbed?
Well, we do have thanks to Alyssa helping me with this, we have a good Instagram presence, and it's Flatbed Press on Instagram handle. And then our Flatbed website, Flatbed Press at flatbedpress.com, has a lot of interesting information on it as well. We also have a Facebook page, Flatbed Press, and we use Flatbed Press for all of our handles. Although when I moved here to Flatbed's new third location, we dubbed the location anyway Flatbed Center for Contemporary Printmaking, because we have so much going on here. We wanted people to realize that there was a community press as well as a Flatbed Press and Flatbed's gallery here.
Yeah. It sounds like, there's a press, but there's a lot more happening, as we talked about. So, Well, thank you for taking an hour away from, everything going on. And I'm just so happy we finally got to talk, and that Flatbed is out there in the world putting good prints out and educating people. And just thank you so much for the work that you do.
Well, you are welcome. I love what you're doing. I mean, you really have added to the printmaking community. We're able to hear more than what we ordinarily could, or learn more, and I really appreciate your program.
If you liked today's episode, we have a Patreon where you can help us keep the lights on and get bonus content, like Shop Talk Shorts with our editor, Timothy Pauschak, who digs deep on materials, processes, and techniques with our guests. Also, if you've listened this far, you might just be that special kind of print friend who would leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts. It would mean the world to us if you did. And no joke, it really does help support the show. And that's our show for this week. Join me again next week when my guest will be Rashawn Rucker. We talk about his early childhood influences, watching wrestling with his grandparents, and making championship belts for the whole neighborhood. His discovering the iconography of pigeons while walking down the sidewalk, his love of educating viewers about his work, and making artwork that's now in the Smithsonian from his sofa in his living room. You won't want to miss it. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with editing by Timothy Pauschak and music by Joshua Weber. I'll see you next week.